Hello everyone, welcome back. Today we're going to do a day after analysis. So yesterday I was at a different location where I shot this 7.5-inch AR at 300 yards, 400 yards, and 500 yards. Okay, and today basically I'm going to talk to you guys about what I did to be able to get those results. What am I zeroed in to be able to get those hits out at that distance? That was actually one of the questions that came up. Let me zoom you guys in a little bit over here so you can get a closer look at this paper that I have up, which I brought back from the other location. So again, this is a 7.5-inch AR. The optic is the Holosun 503G. That's an ACSS reticle, and it's got a 6x vortex magnifier behind it. Okay, so I'm using magnification. Okay, so my initial zero on this, I believe, was close to 100 yards zero. Like I think maybe I was like 1 inch high at 100 yards, but it was pretty close to like I think it was a plus 1 inch at 100 yards. Okay, and the reason why I went plus 1 inch at 100 yards is because I knew that it's a shorter barrel. I want to be able to go out to further distances, so that's why I did that plus 1 inch at 100 yards. Okay, so I started off with the 300 yards, and I put this paper out there. First of all, let's talk about the reticle that I'm using. Okay, the reticle looks like this. Okay, it's the ACSS reticle. It's got the horseshoe here. That's for like the CQB, fast target acquisition, and then it's got the chevron here, which is basically an arrow, and then it's got 3 dots underneath. Okay, let me give you guys a closer look. Okay, so you got the chevron with the 3 dots underneath it. Now, this is what it looks like when you're using the magnifier. Okay, if you're not using a magnifier, if you're looking at it with your naked eye, it looks like that. So you don't see, unless you got like really good vision, you're not going to see the detail of the dots. What happens is the entire arrow with the 3 dots underneath it, it kind of becomes like a solid arrow, and it kind of looks like a red dot. So at CQB distances, I'm taking this entire thing and putting it like center mass and pulling the trigger. I kind of see this thing as a one as a one piece thing. Okay, with the magnifier, you see the details, and again with the 3x, even with the 3x, you'll see the details. With the 6x, you'll see the details even more. And the nice thing about the chevron is, regardless of whether you're using a 3x or a 6x, the tip is very fine. So even though the target gets bigger, the reticle gets bigger, right? That gets magnified, but the tip doesn't get magnified really, right? Because that's infinitely fine. So that gives you a really good aiming point. Okay, so now the question becomes, what do these dots mean, right? So here's the thing: this 503G is set up in such a way that you can make these aiming points mean whatever you need to make them, right? Because you can shoot this on an AR with a 16-inch barrel, and they're gonna impact at one point. You can put this on an AK-47. Bullets going at a different speed. You're gonna get different points of impact. I've put this on a 9mm rifle, right? On a 9mm AR. Again, so like I think on a 9mm AR, the bottom dot, I think that was like my 200 yard aiming point. Okay, I've done it with a 22 caliber. So depending on what you're using, what caliber you're using, you have to figure out what these dots mean to you. Once you figure out what they mean to you, now you have a point that you can hold on and get consistent hits at that target. So the thing I was trying to do yesterday is I was kind of trying to figure that out. Okay, what do these points mean at 300 yards, at 400 yards, at 500 yards? I mean, I knew I had basically a 100 yard zero, and if these points over here, if these dots don't come in exactly where you want them, well, you can always adjust a little up or a little bit down, because if you're like plus 1 inch at 100 yards, or plus 2 inches or plus 3 inches or plus 4 inches, that's, you know, at 100 yards, that's not going to make a difference, right? Whether you're impacting here, none of that makes a difference at 100 yards or at 50 yards even, you know, or even, you know, so I mean, if you're using a 25-yard zero, right, on the red dot, you know, at 100 yards, you're about 10 inches high, okay? So that's like standard holdovers that we're kind of used to using anyway. Or if you're using a 50-yard zero, your holdover at 300 yards is going to be about 10 inches high, okay? So with up, you know, so we're kind of used to using up to like 12-inch holdovers at certain distances, okay? So going into this with, I think with the plus 1 inch at 100 yards, I put my paper out at 300 yards, and what I did is I took my chevron and I centered the tip on the paper over here, like that, okay? So the legs came out to about here, okay? And what I did is with the legs, these legs over here, right? These legs over here, what I did is I centered them on the paper so I had the same amount of white on this side as on that side, okay? So that's how I centered on the paper, so I knew I had a good aiming point. And now all it came down to is my trigger squeeze, right? Being able to squeeze the trigger without moving the gun. And this gun has a standard mil spec trigger, okay? So this is like a 7 to 8 pound trigger pull, which is like I've hit really good groups, like half-inch groups with you know 3/4 inch groups with mil spec triggers. However, it does take a lot more work. It's harder to do it on a consistent basis. With a 3-pound trigger, you can do it more consistently. So it's not that you can't get good groups with a mil spec trigger. It's just you got to work a little bit harder, okay? So took this to 300 yards, put my tip over there, legs came out to here. I took 5 shots, and my 5 shots impacted down here, okay? So you can see the circles, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This was my best group of the day. 5 shots, 7 inches. 300 yards, okay? The ammunition I was using was Federal Premium 77 grain Sierra Match King, okay? So I am using premium ammunition. I'm gonna say that the ammunition is more important than whose name is on the gun, okay? So this is a Palmetto, right? Both upper and, actually, what's the lower? No, the lower is Reticle, actually. The upper is a Palmetto. 7.5-inch barrel. I don't think that matters nearly as much as what ammunition you use, okay? Because that's what's going to make them. So 300 yards, 7-inch group. The problem is that after I look at this, I'm like, okay, the group is nice, but it's way low. I suspected that, hey, if I'm impacting this low, it's going to be a lot harder for me to get out to 400 and 500 yards. So what I did is I adjusted 8 clicks up, okay? So 8 clicks up is because it's a half inch at 100 yards adjustment on this optic. So the 8 clicks up, I speculated would push me 4 inches higher, okay? So I took, so I went 8 clicks up. I took another 5 shots. Those are the 5 shots that you see here in the triangle. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. As you can see, my group opened up significantly here. Again, my trigger, I centered, right? I came back to the center without having to, so here, me going to a little bit towards the right, that was all my trigger pull. I pulled those shots a little bit to the right. This time I was able to stay centered. However, my group opened up to a total of, Total of 16 inches, okay? 16 inches with the 5 shots at 300 yards. But I was happy with my elevation, where I was impacting. Yeah, tip of the chevron there, legs coming out to here. My first dot, this dot right here, right, is basically right here in the center of my triangles, okay? But what I did is I didn't try and put the dot in the center of the paper. I put the tip up here because it was a finer aiming point. What I could have done is put the dot at the top of the paper and put the equal amount of space on both sides. That would have worked. But I said, you know what? I've already got this hit here. Let's not change too many things at once. So I anchored on the chevron. My dot ended up over here, and my hits ended up pretty much where that first dot is. Okay. So I'm happy with that, and I said, okay, next we're going to take this out to 400 yards. So at 400 yards. All right. So again, same ammo, same gun. Ignore the circles. The circles are for shooting something different. We're looking at the holes that do not have circles. Okay. So I took a 10-shot group this time. 10 shots. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 hits. 9 out of 10 at 400 yards. These 9 shots from the widest points came in at 14 inches. Okay, so we got 9 out of 10, 9 out of 10 with a 14-inch cluster. I'm not going to call it a group because we don't know where the other shot went. But with the 9 out of 10, we got 14 inches, which is pretty satisfactory. The way I got this is I took the second dot, okay, the second dot over here, right, in between the other 2 dots, and that one, what I did is I anchored it to the top of the paper. So basically it came in about here. I put the equal amount of white paper on each side of that dot, and basically my point of impact was just beneath it, right? You know, basically almost touching it. So that was my point of impact. I'm like, great. I mean, it looked like I was pretty centered. So my trigger pull was good. This looked pretty good. Okay. Then I say, okay, now we're gonna do 500 yards. So I shot the 500 yards on this paper over here. Again, we're looking at the holes without any triangles or circles on them. Okay. So basically, again, 10-shot group. We got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I'm pointing it out to you so that you can see, the spacing at 500 yards. So that's 7 out of 10. Yesterday, initially, I thought I wasn't sure what one of the holes were because it didn't look perfectly round. But today, I took a closer look at it, and I can clearly, after I straightened out the paper a little bit because it was kind of on the crease over here, I can clearly see the burn marks that all the other ones have. So today, I know for sure that it is a hole. So it's 7 out of 10. With the 7 that we got on the paper, we've got, let's say, we got a 20-inch group. Okay, so we got 20. We got 7 out of 10 at 20 inches at 500 yards. And the way I got this is I took the bottom dot over here, right, the third dot, right, and I put the third dot at center paper, equal white paper on each side of the dot. All right, so the dot's about that big, and my point of impact is just underneath it, right? Just underneath it over here. So the thing I'm trying to figure out today is, okay, so if my dot's here, I'm impacting over here, does it make sense to like maybe adjust my 0 number 2 clicks up, right? Or would that like really mess me up, let's say at 50 yards or 100 yards? So it's like really hard for me to hit a target at 50 or 100 yards. Okay? So the way I answered that is like today I came to this location, which is a little bit closer to me. And what I did is I set up a target at 50 yards and I set up a target at 100 yards to see what my points, my impacts are. Okay, so and this is going to be really important for you guys if you're looking to zero in with this type of an optic to get the type of hits that I got. After I made those adjustments, remember I had zeroed in plus 1 inch at 100 yards, and then after I shot the 7-inch group over here, I adjusted 8 clicks up. Okay, so what that did at 50 yards, okay, putting the tip of the chevron underneath the bullseye, that's the impacts were up here. These 3 shots over here, I'm impacting 4.5 inches high. Okay, so if you guys want to duplicate this point of impact, point of aim, point of impact thing that I got going on here, you're gonna have to zero in at 50 yards. Okay, 4.5 inches high, with the tip of the chevron underneath your bullseye. Okay, now the other thing is you gotta zero in with your magnifier because the magnifier is going to shift your point of aim. Okay, because what I did is I flipped off the magnifier. All right, put the tip of the chevron underneath the blue, took another 3 shots, they landed over here. Okay, so basically there is about a 3-inch drop without the magnifier. Okay, which by the way, if you use a different magnifier, right? Because I've tested this out already many times. If because that's the Vortex. If I use like the Holosun 3X magnifier, it changes, right? It's a little bit different. So if you use it every time you use a different magnifier, you're going to get a shift. So however you plan to be shooting this at distance where it really matters, that you gotta zero in with that magnifier. Okay, now at closer distances, if you flip off the magnifier, it's not going to make a difference because it's only a 3-inch drop, and that 3-inch drop is bringing me closer to my bullseye anyway. So at closer distances, I want to have the magnifier flipped off so I can get closer to my aiming point. So that's working out perfectly. It's actually moving in the right direction. Okay, closer to the bullseye at closer distances. Okay. But the important thing is, in order to get the hits, you gotta zero in 4 inches high, 4.5 inches high at 50 yards. Okay. Now, my trigger pull is a little bit off today. I am pulling a little bit to the right. So again, it's a mil-spec trigger. So sometimes it's hard to, sometimes it's hard to be perfectly consistent with a standard 7-pound mil-spec trigger. I went out to 100 yards. Okay, so at the 100 yards, first I went again with the magnifier on. I put the tip of the chevron underneath the bullseye. I'm impacting way up here, so I'm like, this is like almost off the paper. So what I did is I put another bullseye over here. Okay, and then I fired the shots. This time I think I was overcompensating my trigger pull to the left side. But I'm grouping over it, but we're just looking at the elevation now. So basically, I'm 10 inches high at 100 yards. Okay, so putting my chevron here, I'm impacting all the way over here. So at 100 yards with this setup that I have here, you're going to be 10 inches high, which is if you got a 25-yard zero, right, on an AR with a 6-inch barrel. So 25-yard zero, typically you get your second zero at 300 yards. You're typically 10 inches high at 100 yards. So this is like not something that's crazy. So at 100 yards, I know that, I got to just aim a little bit low. If I'm looking for a headshot, I got to put my, basically put my chevron underneath the head in order to, or on the neck in order to hit the head. So there it is, guys. I wanted to share that information. If I had not actually shot this, I wouldn't know this, and I don't think there's too many videos out there that discuss the specifics of, how to get a 7.5-inch AR to make hits out at 500 yards. Okay, and this is pretty good. I mean, we did get the hits at 500 yards. We got a nice, we got 7 out of 10, right? And the 7 out of 10 we said came in at about 7 out of 10 came in at 10 inches. So, but 7 out of 10, remember, this paper is about 22 inches wide, about the size of a man. You get 7 out of 10 hits at 500 yards, on the man-sized target, you're doing pretty good. So, hope you guys enjoyed this video, and hope this information is useful to you guys. Drop some comments below. Again, you do need something with a bullet drop, okay, in order to make hits at 500 yards. And you do need some type of magnification. The great thing about this setup over here with the magnifier is the magnifier comes off really quickly. It does not change the zero on the optic. And now basically I got a really light gun, okay? And then, so this you can put in your, in your pack, whatever. Or if you're at night, obviously you don't need a magnifier. So I got a really nice light gun. And then if I think that I'm getting into an open area where I might be shooting at some distance, you just flip this on over there, and now or you can flip this off to the side, right? So if you're like in an open area, but you also want to be able to do some observation at longer distance, you flip this on, flip this off. So this is an excellent setup. This is like out to 500 yards, this will definitely get the job done. Especially if you've got a longer barrel, it'll make the job a lot easier. Past the 500 yards, you probably, from that, past 500 yards is where the LPVO really starts to become it really starts to overtake this. Okay, and this wasn't the case before Howson came along with this ACSS reticle. It was like, okay, past 300 yards, your standard 2M-way red dot will get you out to 300 yards. At 400 yards, it can be a little hard to know your holdover, right? You got to kind of hold at the top of the head. At 500 yards, with a standard red dot, you got to cut the man in half and then shift that distance over his head as a holdover. So with this reticle over here, right, the standard red dot, which has the advantage of lightness, right, gives you the ability to get out to 500 yards. But if you're going to be, if you want to try to get from, let's say, 500 yards to 700 yards, or even 800 yards, which is within the realm of possibilities, if you're using 77 grain bullets, and I'm still working on that, right? That's still something that I'm developing. I haven't quite figured that out completely yet, but that's going to be like kind of the next project that I focus on. So once you get past the 500 yards, yeah, now you're definitely in like LPVO territory, from 500 to 800 yards. But if you're gonna be 500 yards and in, with this combination here of ACSS red dot, right, and magnifier, you have the option of going really light, right? Because the LPVO with the mount usually comes in at at 1.5 pounds, right? It adds 1.5 pounds to the gun. These red dots are really light. I mean, yeah, the magnifier adds some weight, but the nice thing about the magnifier is that I can take this weight off really quickly, right, and only put this on there when I need to use it, right? Or if I think I'm going to be using it, you can add this on there. So that's one of the benefits of this setup. So thanks for watching. Drop some comments below. Make sure you subscribe to all my channels. The main channel is Safa. That goes back to 2006. It's the original channel. There's like something like 1,600 videos in that channel that cover not just guns but a wide variety of things. Then my backup channels are Pocono Shooting and Absolute Gun Rights. Make sure you're subscribed to all of them because they back each other up. Sometimes YouTube gives me suspensions. They delete videos. They do all sorts of censorship, leftist censorship stuff to me. So make sure you're in all the channels. You don't have to watch the video again, obviously, but every time you see it pop up, but at least you'll be able to stay in touch with me. I look forward to some comments from you guys. I'll talk to you soon.